back to the Life Money Balance podcast. Oh my goodness, I got one of my great friends here and also a legend, the Queen, Saundra Davis, of all things, just behavioral, emotion, anything just life and human oriented to deal with your money. You have one of the originators here. Saundra Davis, founding member of the Financial Therapy Association, financial planning director at Golden Gate University, founder and executive director at Sage Financial Solutions, and just everything. I'm going to let her tell a little bit about your story. Saundra, thank you for coming on.
Sweetheart, I would not miss it. It is such a joy to be with you. I am so proud of what you are doing out in the world, both for the profession and for the consumers who are listening. So this makes me very, very happy to be hanging out with you today.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it to have a legend on. You know, uh, there's something important in, life and money that's dear to the human condition. And we hear this term a lot in the press and also amongst financial advisors, financial coach, which is dear to you, is financial trauma. And you're an expert in financial trauma and a lot of different emotions in your coaching practice and the coaching endeavors. So before we get into financial trauma, can you just tell the people a little bit about your background, what you do, and how you got all this
Yeah.
expertise?
Yeah. I changed into this field. I became a financial planner when I was 44 after making every money mistake possible, messing up. I mean, I messed up money for decades, right? I would get it, couldn't keep it. I'm everybody's ATM. Back before there was an ATM, I was an ATM before there was an ATM. Anybody who had any financial trouble, I would make good money and I'm still using secondhand furniture. Everybody else got new stuff, right? And I'm still sitting on secondhand furniture. And and there were two things, right? There were two things. I understood very early in shifting this career that knowing better doesn't mean doing better. That was the first thing. That was the first epiphany, because you keep hearing, oh, well, if people just need financial literacy, people just need to know, they need to know, they need to know. Look, you can know better and not do better.
Mm,
And so when I joined the profession, I brought my full self with me. I brought that part of me that was still making money mistakes, even with a master's degree in financial planning, right? Still having an attitude about money that was creating behaviors with money that were harmful for me. And even still today, I am more of a giver and a spender than a saver and an investor. I still am at 63,
mm,
right? So I changed careers at 44 because number one, I knew I wasn't going to have enough. So I knew I needed to do something different.
mm.
I wasn't going to be able to retire. And having taken care of my mother, we gonna get into mama in a
Okay.
minute, having to take care of my mother in her elder
Mm,
years because she didn't prepare for retirement.
mm,
She didn't know, right? And so every behavior that she passed down to me was amplified and magnified because now I'm in that sandwich generation between being a mama, and having a son,
mhm,
right? And so the way that I became this behavioral expert was by first understanding myself. I started with me.
mhm,
And then I realized, wow, everybody I know needs this.
mm.
And so rather than just go and get the degree in financial planning, and I did it, don't get me wrong, because, I spent $40,000 for that degree. And look, I was the expert and I wanted everybody to know it. So I just knew that all I had to do was teach people. So I'm out there and I'm teaching and teaching and teaching. And then they loved the information,
Mhm,
but they couldn't change the actions. They
mm,
couldn't change the behavior. And that's when I learned that rather than judge and shame and blame people,
mhm.
well, poor people wouldn't be poor if they stopped buying tennis shoes and refrigerators and Mercedes, right?
Right.
Instead of that, which our field can do so well,
Mhm,
I decided to understand it.
mm. Oh,
You
yeah.
know, what causes us to know better and not do better?
Right.
What causes us to have information and the desire to do better and not do that which we say we want to do. So that's how I got in the field. And then everything that has happened as a result is to build on that. But I just want to be clear, it started with me understanding Saundra. So I had to be my own expert before I started trying to be other people's expert.
Working. And do you find that people appreciate that value and feel that value, that you've done your own work? Do they feel that it translates, or do you even feel? Do they feel the value? Can they feel that? And do you feel that that translates to other people, that you've done your own work and been through something, and then also stacked on the expertise on top of that?
I believe it. I believe that's true. So what I hear the most is, I finally feel like somebody understands me.
Mm-hmm.
I also hear, I don't, since I don't judge other people's behavior. Number one, I don't judge myself harshly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind to myself, even in my mistakes. And so that helps me be kind to others also. So when people are working with me, number one, I stay relevant, right? So I don't act like, we used to use the term, about people who were uh, recovering smokers, right? And then they run around and they want to preach to everybody else about what they should do,
Right.
right? And so, and I'm not knocking that. I understand that when you learn something and when you grow in an area, it is natural for you to want to support other people. The rub comes when you judge other
That's right.
people. And so I treat it as though I saw a movie that I loved, and now I'm sharing that information. I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to tell you what you should be doing. I'm saying, hey, look, I checked out this movie about making money and doing better with my money, and I want you to know about it too. What you do with it is on you.
Right.
But I don't want you to be able to say nobody told me, because that was the stump for me. Nobody told me when I was 22 that I needed to think about Saundra at 62. Right? Nobody told me when I was 32, hey girl, you halfway there. You better think about this thing. You better, what Aretha say, you better think, right? And so just nobody told me. Nobody told me. And so my mission is to make sure that everyone who wants to know gets the information in a way that's accessible for them, right? Not you gotta come to it the way that I came to it, however it is that it comes to you. And so for coaching, that's the magic of coaching. I meet people where they are, not where I think they should be.
Right.
So anybody I'm talking to them from their station, dealing with their reality, and dealing with what is their motivation. What are they trying to get to, not what I think they should be doing. So yeah, people seem to enjoy it. I've got quite a following now. I'm a little bit
Just a
popular,
little
just a little
bit,
bit.
just a little bit. Yeah, like my niece says, "Is that Uncle Preston? You're Googleable." And I think Sandra Davis, I think you're Googleable. Just put the name up in there.
I'm I might be kind of Googleable.
Right, right. And I like what you said about meeting people where they are, and then allowing people to, you know, admit where they are. I have this 6A system, and having your moment. Remember Oprah? She was like, "Oh," right. And the three
Yes,
A's is just admit where you are, and then acknowledge how you feel about it. And so you can have that process
yes,
of that emotion, and then it clears you a little bit. It set yourself up in order to take some action. And so
yes,
there's a process to everything. So you're
yeah,
working with people and not shooting people to death, right? And also too, I like what you shared about living in testimony, so to speak. You don't have to be in a
yeah,
faith house in order to do that. But it's like if you've been through a transformation, a transformative experience, you do want to share that. You don't have to say, okay, I did this, you should too. But you can also say, I've experienced this transformation. Man, I want to share that. And if somebody says, oh, okay, I see how you're living, let me ask about that. And then it's a share. And then it becomes
yes,
an
exactly.
inspiration.
Exactly. Exactly. And there is a difference between inspiration and motivation,
Mm,
right? I mean, someone can talk with me or come to one of my events or something and feel inspired and yet not be ready.
mm,
And that's okay too. So if they're not ready, then my conversation is, okay, so what's it going to take for you to get
mm,
ready? For me, what it took to get ready was I was 40 something years old,
mm,
and I knew that if retirement was 20 years away, I was going to be in bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
That's what worked for me. Different things work for different people.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was like, oh, wait, if you want to be able to walk away. Now, of course, I'm 60 and I'm still working and still loving what I do, but I didn't know that back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely.
I didn't know how I would feel today. So now how I look at it at my age and stage is that I think about what does it mean for me to be work optional,
Right.
where I'm only working as long as I want to work. So how does Saundra have to behave? How do I have to think about my money to be there now? That I can say, hey, you know what? I don't want to take that job. I don't want to do that.
Mm. It-
So that's really what the turning point was for me. And so then after that, I became, certified. I'm a certified mindfulness teacher. I'm a financial behavior specialist. I've created a couple of certifications, and the reason that
mm.
matters is that it's the indication that I am constantly and consistently working on Saundra,
Right.
and it shows up with other people, but the work is for me.
It's for you, and also it's about being consistently learning so you can take that information to others and being trained
Absolutely.
in a way. And that's a great pivot to, because your story contains a lot, and it translates to other people's stories so they can begin to share. So let's pivot to the topic of the day, which is financial trauma. It's very important to define what financial trauma is. I mean, because there is different. When you talk about your people's past and what effect that has on today, and how that can either help or hinder somebody's future. Uh, yes, financial trauma could be a part of it, but it may be something different. And it's important to classify, or at least define, what financial trauma is, so we can properly address it, identify, and maybe do something about it. So what is this thing, financial trauma? What is it, in your expert opinion?
So the government name comes from Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. That's the long name, the full government name for SAMHSA, right? And they're the ones who say what mental health conditions exist, what they mean, how they show up, all of that. So I'm going to read, and I am reading
Okay,
because
yeah,
I
let's
don't have
let's
it
break it.
memorized. So
Yep.
I'm going to give you the government name, and then I'm going to tell you what that means for me. Trauma results from an event, series of event, or a set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically, emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. That's what SAMHSA says, right? That's what the government says
Mm-hmm.
about trauma. Now, the best explanation that I have ever heard from trauma, and the one that actually turned the corner for me, was by Dr. Ted Klontz. And he said to me, and we were talking about me,
Okay.
right? About my trauma, right? So that's where this come from. He said, trauma is when something that should have happened didn't,
Mm.
or something that shouldn't have happened did.
Mm. Mm.
And so when we look at it from that perspective, there are many, many things that can happen. You and I can have the same experience, and you experience it as trauma, and I do not,
Mm. Mm.
right? So there can be trauma that you are not traumatized by,
Wow.
right? And so I think what concerns me about what I'm hearing out in the field right now is that we calling everything trauma. Your mama said, we ain't got no McDonald's money,
Mm.
and we're calling that a financial trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now I'm not saying that it is not possible that people can hear a message about money that causes a trauma for them. But my curiosity is it a financial trauma, or is it a security perspective? Is it my security as a human being is threatened? My security as a child is threatened. I don't know that my parents can care for me.
Mm.
I don't believe that that is a financial trauma.
Right.
I believe that's a security trauma where you don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the danger in my mind is that if we start naming everything that has financial implications, because the number one truth is there is no aspect of our lives that money doesn't touch.
Yes, that's facts. Yes.
So are we now going to call every single thing a financial trauma and miss what might be under it?
Yeah. Right.
Right? That's what makes me nervous, right? I appreciate that the conversation is happening. What I get nervous about is people pasting that label on it and then thinking that there's a financial thing that is going to change it,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
right? Oh, well, if I just get my budget right, if I get my money mindset right,
Mindset. Right.
that's dangerous.
Yes, it is.
That's
It
dangerous.
is. It is.
That's dangerous because that trauma might be something that is deeper than money. It might show up in money,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can show up in money. You can have, and I say this all the time when I'm out speaking, you can have two people raised in the same household, and those two people here, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, everything they ask for, we can't afford it. You can have one of those two people say, I will never live like that again and save every dime. And the other person say, I'll never live like that again and spend every dime.
Mm. Mm. Right.
Right?
Mm.
And so we have to reconcile that, yes, there are financial things that create trauma. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was a homeless teenager, right? I went from being a straight A student, living in a 5-bedroom, 3-story house in San Francisco, to being in a studio apartment in Los Angeles with 4 people, and then without a home.
Mm. Wow.
And so what that created for me was a trauma. It wasn't a financial trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It had financial
Right.
implications,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing was my safety,
Yeah.
my security,
Mm-hmm.
my trust in the adults in my life to care for me, right? Because I was only 15,
Mm-hmm.
well, just turning 60, right? Now, how does that show up? Fast forward 50, 40 years,
Right.
right? How does that show
And this
up?
is key.
Yeah, because this is the point, right? So all of my life, every dime I made, I spent just like my mom.
Mm.
Every dime I made, I spent. I was in the military. I've always made good money. I've always been able to make money. I've been self-employed for 30 years. I've always been, but every dime I got, I spent. And if I would save, I would spend it down. If I created debt, I could pay off the debt, but then I'd come back up to a debt threshold. I still navigate that today. I still have to make choices about that today because that was such a deeply embedded reality for me. You are not safe.
Mm.
You are not secure. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, having money didn't mean security.
Wow.
So in my mind, there's no such thing as security. So why would I save?
See.
So
Yeah.
you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I want to say this final thought, and then I want to hear your input on this as well. So when my grandchild, my eldest grandchild, who is now 24, when she approached 15 years old, guess what happened with me? I'm triggered, I'm activated, whatever word you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
You
pick a
word.
word, right? Pick a word. I'm all that. Amygdala and all of that. What do professionals say? Losing my executive function, all of that. All of that. Scarcity, all of that. Pick the
Pick it.
name, right? But how it showed up was I was willing to invest in a home that I purchased with and for my son and his children, my grandchildren,
Mm.
because I never wanted and never want. So this ain't past tense. This is Saundra today.
Mm.
I never want anybody to be able to tell my grandchildren, you got to move out of this house.
Mm.
Right. And so is it a trauma? Was it a trauma? Absolutely. Did it impact my behavior? Absolutely. And can I manage it? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but I don't manage it from, well, what are you going to do about your money? I manage it from, Saundra, what does safety mean to you?
Mm,
What are you really doing when you spend? What are you really doing when you offer financial support to other people? What's really going on for you?
mm-hmm,
And so that's what, my academic stuff, all of the degrees and all of the certificates and all of those other things, the bottom line is, Saundra, what happens for you when you notice that you feel scared
mm,
and there's a financial decision to make,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? And then what do you want to do about it? So to me, that's that full circle.
It sounds like you saying that a financial trauma is an augmentation, like a financial situation augmented a an original physiological or psychological state to it
That's what I'm
and
saying.
moved it and moved the line and shifted it a little bit where otherwise wouldn't have been shifted. And it had an embedded trauma into you, and then it carried on to where you had to either unlearn or learn it.
Right. And that's what I'm hoping people hear, right? Because so we wouldn't say, if I were over or under eating,
Mhm.
we wouldn't say, well, Sandra, your food trauma
Mhm. Right.
when you were a kid,
Right.
right? We would just say the trauma that you experienced as a child is showing up in this way. So that's how I feel about it. It doesn't only happen as children.
Mm,
We can experience trauma as adults.
mhm,
Now the adverse, and if people want to look at it, the website is called Know Your ACEs,
mhm,
ACES, Know Your ACEs, and that is the adverse childhood experiences. And everybody, this is everybody. I believe everybody
yeah.
should do that for themselves. And the reason is it can help us understand why we do the things that we do if it's not readily available to us,
Mhm,
right? I didn't understand why I kept putting myself into debt for other people. For other people.
right. Yeah.
I'm getting a credit card and I'm buying other people's stuff. I'm still on secondhand furniture,
Mm,
but I'm using my financial resources for the betterment of others. Now, I don't get upset with myself about that because I believe in the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because we
and
are.
Bluetooth, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm cool with it
Mhm,
as long as I put myself first.
mhm,
So it's not that I don't help others, support others, that's still okay for me in the context of my self care first. And then what is a reasonable way for me to support the people, the causes, the things that I care about in a way that doesn't harm me.
mhm.
So that's where it landed for me.
Well, and a couple of things so we can leave our audience with some hope, right? Because financial trauma, just trauma in general, is a very emotional and serious topic and heavy at times. It does need some sort of hope that hey, it can be addressed, it can be worked through, and there is some light. So when it's identified, then what are some of the approaches in your field? And I've done it myself a little bit, either through self work and through with others as well. Tell us about some of the approaches that help people work through
Yeah,
and
yeah,
move onward.
yeah. So this is my favorite part, right? Because the first thing is you hit the nail on the head. There's always hope. Every day that we get up, we get to make a
Mm-hmm.
change. Every day we wake up. So there might be some folks out there who feel like, oh, this is so overwhelming. I'll never be able to change. Look, every day you choose to get up and your feet hit the floor or however you get on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
you get to do something differently.
Mm-hmm.
And the ways that we can look at it, I want you to think about it as kind of, I call it a continuum, but the truth is, you might move between different ways, different interventions. The first one is financial education. Do you know what you need to know to be able to make good decisions? right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what you need to know? So that's the education straight up. Do I know what I need to know? I was talking to somebody earlier today and she said, I really want to get out of this house that I'm in. And I saw one of them postcards that came where they'll buy your house,
Oh
no
yeah, yeah.
appraisal, no nothing. They'll just buy your house, right? One of those, right? And I said, so my curiosity is, what do you know about those types of offers?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not going to just launch into, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
you need to do this and what do you know about that already?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would say is that if you're facing a financial situation, first ask yourself, what do you already know? And where do you think that there's a gap between what you know and what you want?
Oh,
Right? What's the gap between what you know and what you want? Because then it might just be you need some education.
right.
You might just need to find a trusted source for the information that you need. Now, if you're in crisis, then the question is, what is the gap again between where you are and where you're trying to end up? Again, same concept, but what's different is you might already be working from a deficit. You might be, in trouble with credit. You might be in trouble with debt. You might not have savings. And you might need to work with somebody who can help you develop the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So if knowing isn't enough, but you need somebody to help you develop the plan, then you might work with a counselor, right? That might be a credit counselor, housing counselor, budget counselor, right? Now, a coach is going to help you navigate when you know better, but what you're doing is incongruent with what you know.
Ah,
So a coach is going to help you figure out, so where are you stuck? What is the vision you're holding for
so,
yourself?
so like you said,
And
you're moving up the continuum ladder from
exactly,
crisis
exactly.
to know and do.
Exactly, exactly. And then, kind of, once you've gotten yourself to the point where your behavior, more often than not, is aligned with what you want to have happen, you might be ready to talk with a financial planner that says, okay, if you're trying to get to a place where you're looking at investments, you're looking at your long term goals, now you might want to talk to, again, a trusted advisor, not a salesperson, but a trusted advisor who can help you navigate that part. Right. And now the wonderful thing about financial therapy is that anywhere along that, you may truly find yourself stuck,
Mm-hmm.
so stuck that you cannot move forward. Now, as a coach, if I'm working with somebody that they are so stuck that they cannot move forward, then what I might be asking them is, would it be helpful to talk to somebody that can help you navigate that past situation?
Right.
I'm a coach. I'm not going to try to do that. Right. And so wherever you are, there's someone that can help you navigate where you are and the future vision of where you're trying to go.
Oh, wow. Woo, you know what? I knew I had the right person on here to chop this financial trauma up the right, well, not the right way, but with the experience lens, not only through personal experience, but through all of your experience through the years. So I appreciate you. I do want to have you back on and talk about generational financial trauma because that's a lot out there as well. And that's a whole nother paradigm really. So we're gonna have
Yeah.
part two of this conversation very soon. So what you think about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, well, I think it's important because the legacy burden is
It
real,
is.
right? We're now hearing about, epigenetics. We're now hearing about the idea of scarcity, where people who are experiencing trauma or difficult situations are literally cannot make good financial
Yes,
decisions, right?
very much
They
so.
might, and it may not only be financial, but there's a book, and the book is it's kind of academic in some ways, but the guy who talks about it's called Scarcity,
Mhm.
and he talks about how um, uh, continued or complex trauma or complex stress can cause us to freeze and not be able to make good decisions. So yeah, it's real, and I look forward to us getting back together and talking about it.
Most definitely. Part two. Sandra, really appreciate you. Oh my goodness. We dropped a lot of knowledge today. All right. Well, tell the people where they can find you and what you're up to right now.
Google me, y'all. Google me. So most of what I do actually is training other professionals, but there are occasions where I do workshops and things that are public facing. But my organization is sagefinancialsolutions.org. I'm also on LinkedIn. People can find me there. And Sage Money, sage.money on Instagram, sage.money
All right.
on Instagram.
Appreciate you. Love you, Sandra. Really appreciate you. And we'll see you on part 2. All right, everybody.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in. And we'll be chopping it up next time on Life Money Balance Podcast. Cheers.